If you're ready to take your destiny into your own hands, you've come to the right place. This is The Bulletproof Entrepreneur, featuring interviews with the most exciting and amazing entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Chi Odogu.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the show today. If you love what you hear on today's episode of the podcast, go to iTunes and leave a review and a comment. It helps other great listeners like yourself find the show. And of course, you can always find more episodes of the Bulletproof Entrepreneur podcast at www.odogwu.com. And without further ado, on with the show. Hi everyone, welcome to another great episode of the Bulletproof Entrepreneur podcast. Today's guest is Chris Hallberg. Chris is known as the Business Sergeant. He's a seasoned business consultant and turnaround expert. He is ranked number 9 on Inc.'s top 50 leadership and management experts. Chris has over 25 years of professional experience in both the business and the military fields. He joined the Army National Guard and became a sergeant within 4 years, leading soldiers in both dynamic and challenging environments. He later transitioned into a business career in sales and marketing and quickly rose to become a vice president. In 2009, he founded an energy-efficient remodeling business and scaled the revenue to $2 million within the first year. Chris then sold the company after 2 years of profitable operations, growing it over 20% consistently year over year. In 2014, he founded Traction Inc., a business advisory company that helps entrepreneurs and business owners around the world successfully optimize their businesses and grow their revenues. He is the author of the new book titled The Business Sergeant's Field Manual. I'm pleased to have him on the show today to tell us a little bit about himself, his business, and his experience. Chris, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Chi.
Great, Chris. So I mentioned a lot about you in your bio. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in business. I know you started off as a young Army officer, and then you went into the corrections in the United States Correctional Department, and then you went into business. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, thank you. I spent my 20s, most of my 20s in uniform, serving a number of law enforcement, military, paramilitary organizations, as you've listed there. I got out of uniform in 1999. I pursued a sales career in the construction space and did sales, got into sales management, became a vice president of sales and marketing, and then started my own company from scratch in 2009 at the height of the Great Recession. And was fortunate to kind of hit the nerve there with a message and a disruptive concept in the construction space. So I started an energy efficient remodeling firm. So it wasn't just construction; it was construction with a conscience, so to speak. Efficiency is the greenest technology out there. So just basically sourcing very purposely made more energy efficient products than the name brand ones we're most familiar with. And I was fortunate to have a great group of teammates there at that company, and we scaled it to a couple $1 million that first year in a very tough time, and then sold the business just a couple years after operation to work on other passions.
So after selling the business, I know you where in the book you talked about how you were looking for something to do. You were driving your wife crazy, and then you came across the EOS, the traction book written by Gino, I believe, and then the EOS framework.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about how you got hooked up with Gino and the EOS framework, and then how you started applying that as a consultant in other businesses.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So I was helping a particularly troubled construction client, somebody that I'd worked with in the past. They had started an insurance restoration company, and their second year of business was over $8 million in sales. And it was lots of friends, lots of family, not a lot of controls. It was really chaos. So I came in to help him kind of save it, turn it around, because despite that heavy sales, there were cash flow issues, execution issues. Just a lot for a 2-year-old company to handle. So I helped them get it to a safe place, and it was a real chore, to be honest. Not knowing where to start, it was really one of the first turnaround things I had experience with. So I completed that assignment, and I was moving on to help another client. And I had come in contact with an old business partner of mine back from Minneapolis, and he was going through EOS implementation with an implementer out of Minneapolis.
Okay.
And I was telling him about my consulting and what I was working on. He says, "Well, you got to take a look at this EOS thing, this traction program from this guy named Gino Wickman. He had been doing it for just a couple months and had already reported some significant gains in execution and clarity of vision, and things were really kind of humming in a very short period of time." So he said, "I've never seen anything like this. You should look at this. I think you'd be good at teaching this." And it falls right in with what you're already doing. So I contacted EOS Worldwide, talked to a gentleman named Don Tinney, one of the founders of EOS Worldwide, Gino Wickman's business partner. Just an awesome guy, and he was the first implementer after Gino, and we kind of talked about what I was working on, and he shared kind of the results he was getting, and it was really intriguing. So I got on an airplane, I flew to Detroit, and committed to doing the training, and I did it with Gino and Don, and it was just an amazing experience. And I met, I think at the time I was like the 60th or 70th implementer. Now, today, as I plan to go to Detroit here in a couple of weeks, there's over 175 people with the training, so it's grown substantially.
Wow.
So that's kind of how I got involved, and that was in early 2014. And I just decided after really learning more about this that all of my coaching clients in the future, if they're going to work with me, they're going to have to commit to this process, because it was a holistic, simple, practical tools to help you kind of align and synchronize all those moving parts of the business. So it was like it was the silver bullet kind of thing I was looking for. And I know they say there's no silver bullets in business, but I think adopting a business operating system, it's a night and day difference versus just trying to make it up every day, which is what most people do.
Yeah. So what are the main parts of this operating system? Because like you said, most entrepreneurs actually go by the seat of the pants and they just wing it as they go along. But having a framework and a system is basically the way nature operates. We all have, our body is made up of several systems: the respiratory system, the digestive system. Even nature has a system for photosynthesis to create oxygen in the world. Everything in the natural world has a system. So it stands to reason that even entrepreneurship, though it appears chaotic, should have a system and a framework that will help entrepreneurs be better at their jobs. So tell us a little bit about the pieces that make up this EOS model.
All right, great. Yeah, beautifully stated, by the way. Right there, Chi. Well said. So yes. So just a little footnote here before I go into what is the entrepreneurial operating system and how it works. In my time in military and paramilitary organizations, they are very process, very system oriented. So I was very comfortable with, this is how you do this. This is how you do this. This is not how you do this, and don't do this that way. If this happens, do that. If this doesn't happen, don't do that. So just want to point out that I was like a moth to the flame when I discovered the system, because, like you just said, it totally made sense. So the argument the discovery that Gino had many years ago when he was helping his father turn around his real estate training company, they successfully turned it around and sold it. Had a nice exit. And then Gino was helping, his friends, fellow entrepreneurs from the Entrepreneurs Organization out with their businesses. And with what he did at his turnaround and what he discovered working with his forum mates, he discovered that, hey, a lot of these people have the exact same problem. So, let's create a system that'll just take care of all these. Yeah. So that's what he did. So people talk about traction, the book, Get a Grip on Your Business, where he outlines the entire, entrepreneurial operating system, in a book. So first step is, get your hands on that book and go a little deeper. But a high level, what is EOS? So his discovery was, to the degree that a business can strengthen the 6 key components of their business, any business, any industry. Yeah. The 136 problems in business just go away, because they're actually symptoms of being weak in one of the 6 key components. Yeah. So the first key component is the vision component. And that's just simply getting the entire leadership team and then ultimately the entire company 100% on the same page with where the business is going and exactly how it's going to get there. The second key component is the people component. And this is just quite simply, putting the right people in the right seats. The right people means they share your values. They're great to be around, fun, energizing, collaborative, just a great environment. Right seats means three things. GWC, they get it, they want it, and they have the capacity to do it really better than anyone else you can find, the highest level. Yeah. When you have the right people in the right seats, business becomes infinitely more easy. I find in my journey as an EOS implementer, helping leadership teams gain traction through implementing EOS, is most of the issues are kind of in that people. Those are the big ones. Once we fix those, everything else goes pretty quick. So just to move on, the third key component is the data component. And this is getting rid of all the egos and the subjectives and the personalities and just boiling the organization down to a handful of numbers, because obviously the numbers don't lie. So giving everyone a scorecard, a forward-looking weekly metric to hit. So we measure the human activity versus the end result. So it's kind of a new way of looking at it. Most people look at lagging indicators. We look at leading indicators. Then obviously giving everyone a number that they can crush and feel great about their contribution to the organization. So those are the first three. And when you're strong in the vision component, strong in the people component, and strong in the data component, you've created a business that's open, honest, lucid. Problems or issues stick out like a sore thumb. That leads us fourth key component, which is the issues component. And that's just creating an environment where, you can just call things out. And instead of being the one who gets the stink eye for calling out something that's busted, broken, not working, you actually get a high five and say, hey, thanks for bringing that up, or thanks for catching that. Good looking out there. And then we have an issue solving track to make sure that we're solving the issues at their root versus a symptom, which is another common thing that people do in business, with an issue solving track called IDS, which stands for identify, discuss, and solve. So identifying the root issue, discussing what needs to be discussed only once, not twice, and then we go to a solve, and then we solve that by issuing to-dos. To-do is a 7-day action item, and the team's job is to get 90% of those to-dos done every week. And if you do, you're getting stuff done. And that leads us to our fifth key component, which is the process component. And that's just simply documenting let's say the 20% that gives you the 80%. And then getting all your systems FBA are followed by all. And then the sixth and final key component is the traction component. Yeah. And that's just bringing the vision down to the ground, making it a reality, creating this 90-day world with rocks, if you're familiar with the term that Dr. Covey coined many years ago. And then creating a meeting pulse of weekly meetings. So kind of like, think about like the Super Bowl of business meetings once a week for an hour and a half, and eliminating, 3-4.5 hours worth of other meetings. So you have the time to put your head down and actually execute versus over meeting, which is also common. So those are the 6 key components. And my job as an EOS implementer is to get businesses over 80% health in all 6 key components. When you're a company and you're over 80% health in all 6 key components, you're kind of good to go. Your job is just to maintain that level. And now you're one of the top 5% companies that can kind of go wherever it wants and do whatever it wants to do. And there's a waiting list to work there, and high profits and great culture. And, really it's just it's an amazing process. And it's allowed me to be a heck of a lot better as a business coach.
And this process can be applied to any type of organization. So we're talking, even if it's in the military, non-profit organization, companies that earn from as little as maybe 200K to 2 billion in revenues a year, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you can use it however you like. Gino designed the program. The sweet spot was entrepreneurial companies between 2 and 50 million in revenue, and 10 to 250 employees. Having said that, I have clients that are smaller than that, and I have clients that are much, much larger than that as well. So it can be, it can be used across the board. In organizations over 250 people, you might have to do some extra things.
Yes.
But I find that even publicly traded companies, we're talking, 700-800 million in sales, large organizations are wanting to be more agile. They're wanting to be more scrappy, and more of a speedboat than an ocean liner, as I like to tell people. So they adopt this mindset. So even if you have a 200-page investor report, they're taking the very, greatest hits, the top of the iceberg on all those things, and put them into a simple 2-page document, simplified strategic planning tool called a Vision Traction Organizer. So even the big guys have to do the same work as the little guys.
Yeah, because I would actually see that a bigger organization, because of the layers of management in between, from like the executive to the implementers at the bottom, getting the framework to work all across the system is where the impediment lies. Is that correct?
Yeah, you've nailed it again. So what we do is we kind of train the trainer.
Okay.
So we work directly with the leadership team. So I'm usually all day in an offsite conference room. These are 8-hour days typically, and I'm in there with 3 to 10 executives, CEO, COO, and heads of state for all different functions of the business. Head of sales, head of marketing, head of finance, head of ops, and however many functions that looks like. And then I teach them. And then we have a space learning approach where they practice themselves in a bubble for a few months, 90 days or so. So you don't want the blind leading the blind. So we have to give them that skill. And then when the tools are in a good state and everyone's conversational with the process, they roll it out to the rest of the organization. And over a quarter or two, that's where everybody adopts all the different parts of the system. And we get EOS all the way down to the all the way end of the org chart, or we call an accountability chart. So it takes a while. These are humans. But most of my clients, the vast majority, report a huge uptick in traction. Great business execution within the first 90 days, 6 months, and then I usually stick around for about 2 years or 10. Sessions over 2 years. So about 5 offsites a year for 2 years. After that, we've run out of stuff to teach the team. They're experts and they don't need us or really anybody anymore. They're good to go.
Yeah. And that is an unusual place to be, knowing that as a business consultant, once you start working with a client, you pretty much have an expiration date of about 2 years, which a lot of professional services people don't ever want to let their clients know. They don't want them to be in that driving position that, hey man, by 2 years you should be a master at this and you don't need me anymore. That's a very unusual position.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah, it is, but it's refreshing. And we don't really view ourselves as consultants because a consultant's job is just that, right? To bury themselves deep and bill for until the billing stops, right? So it's really great to know, hey, it's our 5th session. We should be about halfway there. Do you guys feel halfway? You do? Okay, good. Or you don't, or you feel ahead. Let's talk about that. It's great to kind of have that context. So instead of being consultants, there's 3 things that an EOS implementer does. First is a teacher teaching EOS tools purely, right from the implementer guide, and a facilitator, the right answers in the room most of the time. Our job's to get it out. And then a coach, because a lot of times people just can't see themselves playing the game. And a coach can spot things, hey, what's this tree over here? You guys are looking at the forest. I'm pointing out one tree that you can't see. So that third party, having, been an experienced leader, an entrepreneur with a successful exit, I have some input here and there. When I see something that I have experience in, I'll ask, hey, would you be interested in an experience share? I've seen this before. Would you like to know, what I learned from it? So it's kind of neat where you get to do those 3 modes, those 3 things all day long.
Yeah, cool. So I was going to ask you about some case studies about EOS, but I want to transition over into your book, because after listening to you talk about EOS, I see like some of the inspiration in your book is actually expanding on the framework in EOS, correct?
Yeah, I mean, about 20% of the book is EOS, and the other 80% is kind of, my experience, my mindset, and the whole premise of this book is, number one, let's adopt a more military-based, team building mindset, and take things, a little more seriously than perhaps some do at the office. Raise the stakes.
Yeah.
Hold each other more accountable and achieve greatness together. And then the second thing is to adopt a business operating system. Now, there's 4 or 5 on the market. EOS is just the one that I chose to work with because I felt it was the simplest to understand and easiest to implement.
Yeah. So now let's talk a little bit more about your book. What was the main inspiration for the book? What did you see lacking in the marketplace that caused you to say, hey, you know what? I went through this experience in the military. It's a great experience. It has wildly effective applications in the civilian field. And then once I started documenting this book, you know what, how do I teach it and disseminate this information so that it can become more widespread and more widely adopted by leaders that have never actually received military training?
Yeah, so great questions. For answer to question one is my clients. A couple of different clients mentioned, like, hey, when are you going to write your book? Because I tend not to be super politically correct. I like to military. There's a lot of swearing, a lot of interesting new words, great funny sayings, and people really like to be in the room. And a lot of times they're taking notes. Oh, I got to use that one. And these are all things that I picked up in the service and work for the Department of Corrections and the Sheriff's Office. And it's just kind of fun, that military-based mindset. So I learned leadership in the service, and no one told me it needed to be different in the civilian. So I've operated for 20 years in the business world like I was a business sergeant. It's just not until some people pointed it out to me, said, hey, you really got to share this. We really enjoy this, and we think other people would. So that was, that's kind of how, it happened. As far as the book and how it's put together, there's some case studies in here talking about, clients. There's, I've included the 5 foundational tools from EOS, just because they're so masterful. And really my goal here was to, it doesn't say anything about EOS on the outside of the book, but you get inside of the book and, there's 20% of it, that is. So my goal here was to let people know, hey, if you change your mindset and you adopt a system, those two things together are all you need to completely turn this thing around and point it towards the direction. So my goal here was to reach other people that weren't in the know about the entrepreneurial operating system. And, kind of as a give back, because EOS has been so wonderful to me, I wanted to spread this word and let as many people, that maybe wouldn't have come in contact but they looked at the book and said, this looks interesting. And then their eyes are now open to this world of business operating systems. So, that was kind of my idea initially.
Okay. I love that. And so I'll just talk about a few bits of the book and then we'll tell people where to get the book. But your first chapter was, Are You Committed? And you're basically talking about leadership. And once I read that statement, I remembered my old professor of strategy in college, and he went through West Point, and he used to always tell us that he'd always ask us a question in every class, which was, which would you rather be in a ham and egg sandwich? Would you rather be the chicken or the pig? And then most people didn't understand that. They say, oh, the chicken. He said, no, you always want to be the pig, because the chicken is interested in the breakfast, but the pig is committed to the breakfast. It has to shed blood for the breakfast to be made, you understand? So that got me chuckling when I read Are You Committed? And you were talking about leadership in that segment, which was basically, leaders inspiring their subordinates to be more committed, and also leaders themselves being more committed to building their organizations and building their teams and their culture. So tell us a little bit about commitment and how it plays a great deal of success in the role of building an effective organization.
Okay, yeah, great. Well, I just think about the couple of failures that I've had in my career, right? And I really looked at those and thought, you know what? I did this for the money. I did this because I thought it was cool. I didn't do it because I was just passionate. I was fired up about it, and every fiber in my being said, I got to do this, So and then I look at the times where I've had some success in life, And it's because, you know what, you're a natural. You love this. This
Yeah.
is you. This is your sweet spot. So you just can't fake it. Life is just too short to put on another face and operate just to generate income or whatever. So that was something that after a business failure that I experienced, I was like, you know what? I said I wanted nothing to do with this, but it's like, I'm sick of this industry, but I'm going to do this one last deal because it does sound pretty interesting and the upside is huge. So, all right, I'll do it. Versus, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. I can't, it was totally from the other thing. So my point, and it's the same thing with the chicken and the pig that your professor said. When you're committed to something and adversity strikes, you'll adapt, you'll improvise, adapt, overcome. You go through it, you go around it, you'll go over it, you'll figure a way out. But if you're interested in something, it gets really, really hard. Hey, look at that other thing. I'm kind of interested in that too. And then you just kind of pivot and you move on. And you really can't create anything of substance in scale because your lack of commitment, it's just a house of cards that'll fall down. Whether if you're willing to go to war on this and give up your nights and your weekends and cancel Christmas or whatever you got to do to make this work, then you're much more likely to make that happen. So committed in the book, are you committed to your business, your industry, your clients? Are you? And then the next chapter, leadership, is are you a leader with following? And that also has a strong level of commitment. Are you committed to being a great leader? If you're a leader because you want a corner office or a great parking spot or a title, wrong answer. That you're the logjam in that organization. You're selfishly taking a leadership position and not leading others, not developing others, not promoting the next generation of leaders. And that's what organizations need. We need to grow in the middle, before we can grow at the bottom. And we don't really need to grow at the top all that much, typically is what I find. So it's that lack of middle managers, really strong leaders, who I call like the corporals, the people right on the ground helping the troops out, the folks that actually execute, what happens at your company. Those are the people that are those first line leaders. When they have the right resources and they have the right training and their whole job is to be a servant leader and, hey, what's blocking you today? Or how can I make us better today? Or, what do you need help with? Versus go here and do that and be quiet about it. Right. So it's all about commitment, right? You can't, I joke all the time. You can't be half pregnant. You can't be kind of in business. You can't kind of be doing EOS with me. Are we doing this? If we are, it looks like this. Are you ready to commit to that? Great, because I'm committed to you. I need that commitment back.
Yeah. And there was one statement you made when you were talking about leadership, which was ownership is not leadership. So what do you mean by that when you say that? I do understand the concept, but from the perspective of in general, in public, we always hear about, you have to take ownership of this, you have to take ownership of that. Especially, it's a well-worn cliche in the business world, and I've heard that quite a bit at work. But what do you mean when you say ownership is not leadership?
Yeah, I actually have a little different take on that. What I'm saying is, if you're a family-run business, or you are a founder and you have some equity, having an investment and owning a business is great, right? That you can make money, you can lose money. It's a whirlwind kind of an opportunity. But just because you have a piece of the pie doesn't entitle you to a certain position within the company because you say so. And I see that a lot. Where you're the lucky last name club, because your last name is Smith at Smith Construction. You can go anywhere and do anything you want with zero recourse because you're the kid of the founder or something like that. So I have plenty of owners that work inside the companies and plenty of family members that work inside the company. But we make it very clear. Yeah, that's great. But it doesn't entitle you. So I find that the ones that I work with are high performing businesses. I think those kids they work twice as hard as somebody with a different last name because they have that perception and they have to fight that. So I always said as an owner, business owner, I'd always make sure that my team saw me sweeping the warehouse at least once or twice a week. There's no I'm dirty unloading heavy windows, triple pane windows off of semi trucks in February in Minnesota, that's commitment. The boss is not too good to do any of this work.
Yeah.
And you've heard the old saying, you don't ask people to do anything you're not willing to do yourself. So that's what I talk about. Ownership is not leadership. Is owners should be able to be fired if they're bad for the company. And by the way, if they're really thinking about their investment, wouldn't it make sense to have the right people in the right seats so that company is highly successful, highly profitable, and they're getting a great return on that, versus they're the very ones that cause the business to fail in a lot of cases, or at least not thrive. And then they wonder why they go through all this brain damage and I'm not making any money. Yeah. It's very common. So that's why I bring it up, just to point those things out. And my goal there was to get somebody to read that, to say, oh my God, I'm that guy. I'm doing that. I got to stop that. Or if you've got a boss that's doing that, hey, what's this book here with a highlighter on page whatever that just happened to land on my desk? The idea is it's an uncomfortable topic. So, those are my favorite topics, by the way. And there's an example of how not only I, but many others feel that's the right way to do it.
Yeah. And I think you already alluded to this earlier, but I want to break this down because it's been in the news for such a long time, and that's the topic of culture. A lot of companies have this, what I call bumper sticker statements of what their culture is, but they pay lip service to those statements. They never seem to actually live it. So how can leaders, especially in the organizations that you're trying to help, build a culture that is going to inspire and motivate the employees to give their best, knowing fully well that based on the statistics and the media, that about 70% of millennials are already disengaged while going to work, and I don't know what the number is for the other generations, but it's quite a high number, when you're spending a third of your life in the office and you're already 80% checked out on Monday.
Yeah. So again, so I don't know whose quote this is, so I won't claim it as mine, but your culture is defined by the worst behavior you're willing to tolerate. So I love that statement there, because if you really think about, just like the old, hey, you're only the chain is only as strong as its weakest link. That's exactly right. So the first thing I'll say with culture is kind of the byproduct of doing a bunch of things correctly in business. It's the sum of a lot of different parts in my eyes. So this is where the business operating system does without it, it's really difficult. It's like a mentor told me once, it's like trying to nail Jell-O to a tree. It's really tricky. So when you have an operating system and an agreed upon set of core values, this is who we are, right? This is what we reek of. Just a handful of rules, 3 to 7 core values. If you live these values, you're going to fit in famously, or it's going to be good. If you don't really value these, life's too short for you to come to the office and hang out with people that don't think the way you think. You should really leave here and go find your unit, because this one isn't it. So to answer your question, the first thing is to have a vision that is communicated, by the leadership team, by the company, however that's decided, usually from the top, and then it's shared, in other places. But a lot of times the team has a big say in what that is and what that looks like, right? Yeah. So once we can define, hey, these are our core values. In EOS we have a core focus, right? There's 2 hemispheres to that. First is what's your purpose, cause, or passion, otherwise known as your why. Your why first, your what, and then your how, right? Talk Simon Sinek, right? And his awesome work with start with why. It's one of those things. Then we say your niche. What do you do? And then we say what's your 10-year target or your big, hairy, audacious goal. So those are the things. Those first 3 questions. Those are the ones that we kind of point up there as the North Star and say, this is what we really want. Do you want that too? Yeah, I want that. Let's go get it together. Or it's not really what I want. Okay, well at least now I know. So first step is to define exactly who you are, or what you do, why you do it. And why somebody would want to come, spend some time with you and have a career, just as, versus using your company as a lily pad, until they move on to something else. So you got to define it, and then you got to get other people that want it, and then you got to get rid of the people that don't want it, because that's a real bummer to the people that do want it.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to have some difficult conversations and liberate people to the marketplace, if they're not willing to do, go where we're all going, that's the first step. So usually, that's 15, 20% of an organization. And that's a big number. That might even be a light number at some organizations, might be a bit stiff in others. But my experience is that, 15, 20% of the people are just the wrong people. Once you send them on their way to go find their people, and you replace them with the right people, wow, you can fix a culture, by firing a few people and replacing them with the right people, and at least get it going the right direction. But, a lot of times people are fearful. They're walking on eggshells. The culture is toxic. And because of the toxicity, it's very difficult to fix without almost a complete reboot, or at least a large scale shift in personalities, as I like to say.
Mm-hmm. And as we start to wind down the show, I have one or two wrapping up questions for you. Now, there was a part in the book that I really love, which was basically you were talking about how in the military, people are deemed to be tactically and, let me see if I get this correctly, tactically and technically proficient, and
right.
How it, helps you become better at execution. Now, I know majority of gaining traction and building your business to last and succeed in the marketplace is all about execution. So spend a little bit of time and tell us, what are the best ways to become tactically and technically proficient so that you can basically execute the mission correctly, which is either to make more sales, land more clients, do more deals, or just even grow and expand.
Right. Awesome question. So military term, tactically and technically proficient. Tactically is, you're using the correct tactics. You're not starting off, you're not putting your whole squad through an open field if there's a wood line that you can skirt. Technically, this is how you operate this piece of equipment. This is how you dial your frequency to get comms with headquarters. You have to technically know how to do your job. So take that out of the military into the business world, Chi, and think about tactically. So I'm standing on the side of the road with a cardboard sign that says, software, $2, okay. Is that the best place to sell software for $2? Or, I don't know. I'm trying to come up with an example here, but it's just, you have to be in the right place and you have to have the right tactics. Mm-hmm. So here's one. Cold calling is nearly dead in the year 2017, right? It's a very, very, very small percent. 10 years ago, it was a huge, double-digit percent. Now it's probably a single-digit percent. Mm-hmm. But now you look at things like inbound marketing and having blogs and podcasts, so talk about your tactics for marketing. That's a great example. And technically, like yourself, you're very well spoken. You get great guests on all the time. You got a great podcast. I mean, you have the skill to pull this off, what you do as the business growth guy, right? Yeah. So you have both technicality and the tactics. When mastering both of those forms meets in the middle, execution is basically the natural byproduct of knowing where to be and know what to do when you get there.
Nice. And for my final question, before I let you go, because I know we could both talk about this for a long period of time, but I want to be respectful of your time. So, looking at your body of work thus far, knowing what you know now, and then going back to 25 years ago when you were starting out your career in business, what are some of the best pieces of advice you can share for someone that is very early stage in their career or just even starting out their entrepreneurial journey and needs, some critical word of advice to keep them on the right path so that they can be on that path to profitability and success and not be one of the statistics that we hear about, 3 out of 4 businesses fail and all that stuff. So what are some of your best words of wisdom you can share for someone that is just getting started?
Yeah, well, you can't fly with the eagles if you're hanging out with turkeys all day, is the first one that comes to mind there. So be mindful of who you associate with. I forget who said it, but you're basically a byproduct of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you're spending time with people that don't inspire you, you're basically just on the treadmill there, right? So also, secondly, find something that you're passionate about. That if you were independently wealthy and you were bored accounting your money, what would you go do during the day, professionally, just to stay interested and engaged? If you can monetize that, then you'll never work another day in your life. That's been said before. But again, once you find that, make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people. When you're smaller and you're just starting out in business, the quality of your subcontractors, your strategic partners are critical. So sometimes you got to fake it till you make it, and you're borrowing somebody else's expertise. But when you're having them work on your clients, they need to understand how you operate with your clients, and your clients shouldn't feel a difference. So, choose your friends, choose your business partners, choose your associates, choose your clients, choose your partners, choose everything with great care, because one wrong decision could be catastrophic in other parts of your business. And then just go out there and don't be afraid to fail, and go out there and my friend Walt Brown says, go out there and make a mess. Just go out there and make a mess. That's what I was told, and I thought, okay, I can do that. His point is you can always kind of clean it up afterwards, but you got started. You did something, and then you can pivot from that. If you're just sitting here formulating the best plan in the history of plans and you're not going to execute on it, well, there's a lot of brilliant ideas that that are left on bar napkins and then don't go anywhere. So those would be some of the main ones there. But also, if I'm on a rant here, if you don't mind,
no.
Be yourself. It's okay to be weird and quirky and do it your way. If you're not the cup of tea for a certain person, then I guess you're not going to work together. But don't throttle yourself back. If they can't handle you at 100 proof, too bad. So be true to yourself, be committed. We're in the general advice lane now, but just be nice. Yeah. I mean, there are so many people that are kind of jerks. It's a zero-sum game. It's either they're winning or you're losing. So find people with an abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset. Those people are negative. By the way, the negative is the easiest thing to find in the world. It takes zero skill to point out something that's not cool or not good or it could be better. The real skill in life is to come up with the solutions to fix those things and get other people involved. Because again, if you pick the right people, you all want the same things. If you have a system to communicate and hold each other accountable, when you have the right people around, I always joke, I'd rather, gnaw off my left arm than come to this meeting without my stuff done, or, have my scorecards or my rocks off track, because I really care and everyone else cares. And when you have that kind of an environment, your chances of being successful are 10x or 100x. I lack the statistics here, but my point is it's a big multiplier than if you're just kind of doing whatever and hoping that someday you're just going to, crack the code.
I love it. So before I let you go, Chris, where can people learn more about you, get the book, obviously, the Business Sergeant Field Manual, and just interact with you and get more information from you?
Yeah, a couple of websites, bizsgt.com, businesssergeant.com. The book's on there. And then if anybody wants to learn more about EOS, that is Traction Inc., TRACTIONINC.com. So one is all about traction, and the other one is kind of about some other things that I do, more militaristic stuff. I'm doing a bunch of stuff with transitioning veterans, and I've got all kinds of neat ideas to help transitioning vets enter the marketplace with some training, which they can leverage their leadership skills and give them kind of what they need for business. So I've got some cool things in the works, but my EOS practice is growing. I have an implementer now that works with me, and probably add a second one here, mid or end of next year. So that's where people can find me. And obviously, if they just want to go to Amazon and get the book, they can do that too. Yeah.
And as an EOS implementer, you work across the U.S. and across the globe, correct?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's 175 of us all over. I think at least 5 or 6 continents. I'm trying to think where it's not represented these days. But yeah, absolutely. I work pretty much just in Denver. I only fly for select clients, and it's rare. And now people are flying into Denver to work with me now. But there's definitely a local implementer, and if you're looking for an EOS implementer, you can obviously, there's a form on my webpage at Traction Inc. You can tell me who you are, what you're looking for, and I can match you with one of those implementers, because I see them every quarter and know who does what.
Great. And I'll put all those links in the show notes on the website once the podcast launches. Chris, my friend, it's really been a pleasure having you on board to talk about your new book, the EOS framework, and basically hearing your words of wisdom for young entrepreneurs out there that are still working hard to make a difference and make a dent in the universe. I want to thank you for coming on to share your story.
It's been my pleasure, Chi. Great conversation. Anytime.
Thank you.